What does M stand for Crompton?
Madeline Crompton, his daughter.
I've been co-opted.
Nice job, Dave.
Okay, we're live, and in another minute, it'll be time to start. Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Danville Town Council. The Town of Danville and the Danville Town Council welcome citizens to participate in our public meetings. Due to the pandemic protocols put in place, our meetings are on the web video communication platform, Zoom. Members of the public can also watch, listen to meetings, and view agendas posted on the town website. Marie, can you please confirm attendance by taking the roll call? Yes. Councilmember Fong?
Here.
Councilmember Stepper?
Here.
Councilmember Storer?
Here.
Vice Mayor Arnerich?
Here.
And Mayor Morgan? Here. All council members are present. Thank you so much. Are there any announcements this evening? To provide live comments during the meeting, we're asking attendees to use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And when the mayor opens up the item to public comment, attendees can raise your hand, your name will be announced, and your audio will be enabled. You're asked to state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. Great, thank you for that announcement. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and pledge allegiance to our flag, and I would like to ask our Vice Mayor this evening to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Will you please join me by placing your hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, too.
Thank you so much. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda this evening? There are no changes. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to item number 4, which is for the good of the town. To address the town council regarding a subject which is not listed on the agenda, please click on the raise your hand option, which Marie Sunseri, our city clerk, mentioned previously. When your name will be announced, you will have 3 minutes to address the council and share your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Know that these items are not on the agenda this evening, therefore we are not able to remark on them as well. Please note that you can also provide written comment prior to 11 a.m. the day of our meetings. Does anyone wish to speak for the good of the town? I do not see any attendees with their hands raised. And we have received information, any emails for the good of the town before 11 o'clock today? No emails received by the town. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then to item number 5, which is our consent calendar. A consent calendar are items that are considered routine in nature and are usually acted upon by the town council in a single action. This evening, I would like to go ahead and ask you if you'd like to have anything removed from the public, to go ahead and hit the raise hand on Zoom and let us know that you'd like to have something removed, and then you'll also have 3 minutes to address the council with your comments. Is there anyone in the public that would like to have something removed off of the consent calendar? I don't see any attendees with their hands raised. No. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and bring it back then to the council. Is there anybody that would like to remove anything from the consent calendar this evening? Okay, seeing none, do I
like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper,
Aye.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Aye.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
And the consent calendar was approved unanimously.
Thank you so much for that. The next item is something that we look forward to on a monthly basis. It's our town manager's report, and that'll be presented this evening by the one and only town manager, Joe Calabrigo.
Wow.
We got you on mute, so I'm going to take you off mute real quick. Still have you on mute. I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that has issues.
Yeah, how about if I took myself off mute? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yes.
All right, much better. Well, thank you, Mayor Morgan and members of the Town Council. This is my monthly update. And so I'm going to, as I have been doing, just sort of lead off by providing the latest and greatest COVID update. As a reminder, as we discussed last month, of course, the response to COVID is a multi-jurisdictional effort with different government agencies that are involved in the response. In the San Ramon Valley, the cities, the school district, the fire district, we each play different roles. And so while we're in constant communication, each agency has its own set of responsibilities. The town is assisting with implementation and enforcement of the various health orders that have come along, trying to continuously keep our community informed, supporting our local businesses and our residents, and adjusting our own town services to make sure that we comply with health orders while keeping our workforce safe. Contra Costa Health Services is the agency that's responsible for issuing the health orders, for coordinating the testing, and now coordinating the vaccines for all of the roughly 1.1 million people in Contra Costa County. And that includes all of the residents in our 19 cities, as well as the unincorporated area. So the big news, of course, was that last week on January 25th, the California Department of Public Health lifted the statewide stay-at-home order that had been in place for roughly the 6 weeks prior to that. And they returned all of the counties to the color-coded tier system under their blueprint for a safer economy. So as part of this action, our county, Contra Costa, and most of the state was moved back in to the purple tier. Some of the significant changes that we saw as a result of that action, restaurants could go back to offering outdoor dining. Hair salons, barbershops, personal services such as nail salons were allowed to reopen. Outdoor social gatherings involving fewer than 25 people from 3 or fewer households were allowed to resume as part of that as well. So as of today, February the 2nd, in Contra Costa County, we are looking at 31.4 new cases per 100,000 of population per day, with a testing positivity rate of 7.1%. We're tracking this because now that we're back in the purple tier, everyone is very focused on what we need to do in order to progress on into the red tier. And as a reminder, in order to move to the red tier, we need to have less than 7 new cases per 100,000 of population and a positivity rate of less than 8% countywide. So in terms of the positivity rate, we're there. And we're continuing to work on getting those number of new cases per 100,000 of population down. It looks as though the significant sort of November through January surge that we've experienced may now be beginning to subside. Background, as of the end of October, Danville had 24 new cases in the past 14 days. But by January 25th, we hit a peak of 223 new cases in the past 14 days. So close to a tenfold increase. As of today, we're back down to 151 new cases. That's our lowest level in the new year. Translates to about 24.7 new cases per 100,000 per day. So moving in the right direction. Vaccines being administered through our county health services as well as through private health care partners, all following the same vaccine protocol. County health has a lot of information on their website now about the vaccine rollout. We're currently in phase 1B of the rollout, which includes frontline essential workers and people over the age of 65. So they have set a countywide goal to deliver 1 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine by Independence Day. As of today, looking at their website, they have administered 131,593 doses of the vaccine. So 11.8% of the population has had the first vaccine in Contra Costa County, so good news. In Danville, we've had over 8,200 vaccines administered, which is the equivalent of 16.3% of our population. So happy to say that among cities in the county, only Walnut Creek has a higher percentage of their population that's received the first vaccine than Danville. So doing very well among cities in the county with the vaccine rollout. Switching topics to touch on economic development. The town council is continuing to receive weekly updates from our economic development staff. And we're continuing to work very hard to provide assistance and support to all of our businesses as we have throughout the pandemic. The major initiative that we've got going on right now is the Forward Focus Grant Program. The town's been able to assist retail, restaurant, and personal services businesses through 2 phases of this program so far that have included $525,000 in funding that's been earmarked for grants of up to $5,000 apiece. So the council just approved the 2nd phase of the program on December the 18th. Grants have been structured to support individual business needs and recovery efforts, and they're available in a number of different categories that you can find by going to our website. To date, we've provided 78 grants under the 1st phase of the program, and we've provided an additional 30 grants so far under the 2nd phase. So the 2nd phase is rolling out a little bit slower than the 1st phase. We've only allocated about $76,000 of the $275,000 that's available at this point. So again, for those businesses that haven't applied that are eligible, they can check our website. They can contact Jill Bergman, Liana Adauto to get more information about that. When combined with the other initiatives that have been rolled out through our economic development program, the town has thus far committed about $875,000 in dollars to supporting our businesses. But there are a lot of other initiatives that are being offered to businesses at no cost by the town right now. These include, we've got a free business assistance program that provides one-on-one support to our businesses, assisting them in applying for state and federal relief funds. For those that are interested on that, we've got another business assistance program webinar scheduled for this Friday, the 5th at 10 o'clock. And the subject is going to be California grant and PPP application process. We've got a free Danville online business directory that our brick and mortar businesses can use to promote their businesses, free complimentary yard signs for businesses to encourage the community to patronize their business. And this year in 2021, our downtown employee parking permits are going to be issued at no cost as well. The town council also in December passed an urgency ordinance establishing a temporary maximum cap on the commission's fees and costs that can be charged by third-party food delivery services on local restaurants within the town. So, and finally, we're continuing to put out ongoing community messages that urge our residents to support our local businesses by buying and shopping locally. So as I've done each month, I want to give a big shout out to Jill Bergman, Liana Dauto, and our staff who are continuing to do a great job of working with and assisting our individual businesses. Now moving on to town finances, quick financial update. As of December 31st, we've passed the mid-year of the current fiscal year. Town Council is going to be reviewing the mid-year budget at your next meeting on February the 16th. We're continuing to carefully monitor our budget as a result of the pandemic that over the last 3 months of the last fiscal year and this fiscal year necessitated making $7.2 million in reductions to our expenditures and fund transfers in order to rebalance our budget. A major contributor to reducing expenditures was about a 15% reduction in our workforce this year. This has included several retirements, including, I would just mention, we've had 4 employees with over 30 years of service to the town that have retired in the last few months. So as a result of the staffing and expenditure cuts, significant reductions have been achieved, and we expect to see our expenditures stay within the budget this year. So overall, at the mid-year in the budget, we're meeting and exceeding our budget forecasts. So good news. While we're continuing to operate under a declared state of emergency because of COVID, we're also looking forward to see how we can use the experience that we've gained, the lessons that we've learned, so that we'll be able to deliver better service once the pandemic has gone. This is going to include looking at things like how we conduct our public meetings, how we do our community outreach and engagement, permitting and conducting business with the town, ensuring that we keep our employees safe within our town facilities and so on. On a legislative front, our legislative committee of the town council met last week on January 26th. The immediate focus of our advocacy work has been to support legislative efforts that assist with pandemic recovery while also limiting new legislation that impacts local control and adds stress to our already stressed resources. Our state legislature is continuing to impose new requirements on local governments to encourage more housing development and greater affordability. Our Senate Pro Tem Atkins has introduced a new package of bills that's been branded as building opportunities for all. And some of these bills would do things like permitting housing in commercial districts, allow for development of fourplexes in single-family neighborhoods, streamline the CEQA process for smaller developments, make more changes to density bonus law. Of course, what we really need, as we all know, is money if affordability is the goal, because even though the state is promoting more housing production, given our free market economy, that's likely to spur more development of market rate housing, and that doesn't translate to affordability. So it's you know, as they said in the movie Jerry Maguire some years ago, show us the money, and the housing will get built. So we're anticipating that much of our legislative efforts this year are going to continue to focus on COVID relief and trying to limit the impacts of the new housing legislation on local land use control. Which kind of leads us to where things stand with the State Department of Housing and Community Development in the RHNA process. We are continuing to look at how to best move forward with the current RHNA process for the cycle that will run for 23 through 30. ABAG, as council is aware, wants to increase Danville's housing allocation by about 400% from the last cycle. So last cycle was 557 units that were assigned to Danville for planning purposes. This cycle, they've settled on a number that's in the neighborhood of 2,200 units. So the housing assignments are driven by a social equity emphasis that that's driving those numbers higher. And we are finding ourselves, I think, in something of an untenable position where it's going to be very, very difficult to plan for the number of housing units that ABAG wants to assign us, and look for much more to come on this in the weeks and months ahead. Switching over to police services, as I mentioned at our last meeting, the police department finished 2020 with another new low in Part 1 crime. But I'll say that, that this record sort of has something of an asterisk on it, given the fact that much of the year saw our population sheltering in place and working from home. The chief's going to present his annual report to the council next month in March. He's continuing to do his weekly 10/8 outreach via Facebook Live as a way to reach out into the community and keep them informed on the latest goings on in the police department. So watch for those Wednesdays at 5 p.m. I want to touch on emergency services to tell the council that our emergency services manager for the past 8 years, Jeff Hebel, is retiring. His last day with the town is going to be February the 12th. Jeff, as you're all aware, has done, I think, an incredible job of coordinating our efforts to maintain a state of readiness in case of a disaster. He's also served as our liaison to the fire district, to the school district, to the city of San Ramon, to the Citizen Corps Council here in the San Ramon Valley, and also to the County Office of Emergency Services. I'm pleased to announce that we have Marcel Indelicato, who is joining us, in fact, joined us yesterday to step into the new emergency services manager role. Marcel has most recently served as a senior emergency planner for the sheriff's office. And what I can tell you is she brings us a wealth of knowledge and experience in all of the areas where we're going to need it. So she's hitting the ground running, and I look forward to being able to introduce her to you. In development services, a lot of activity going on there. I'll start with the building division. The Riverwalk project downtown is moving toward completion. The first temporary certificates of occupancy were issued a couple of weeks ago. So that's moving right along with our staff. Jeff Wright, who's been one of our building inspectors for the last few years, has moved into a plans examiner role. And we're currently in the process of hiring a new inspector and continuing to look at ways that we can use technology to enhance the delivery of service there. One of the things that we're looking at is how we can use cameras to do over-the-counter plan check with plan checkers who are providing the service virtually. In transportation, the bike master plan process is continuing toward completion, targeting April for that. We're continuing to replace some of our lighted crosswalk systems that are, believe it or not, plus or minus 15 years old now. We're working on the design for the Diablo Road Trail project while continuing to seek grant funds to complete that project. In planning, I alluded to it earlier, but we're starting the 23 through 30 housing element process. Our next housing element needs to be adopted by January of 23. We're working on state mandated updates to our ADU ordinance. The plans that the town approved for the development at 375 West El Pintado are back in. You might recall that was going to be a 37-unit townhome project. They are back in now, I understand, looking to see if they can secure an entitlement for a 49-unit development. And the mixed use approval on the former gas station site at Front Street in Diablo is now on hold while they rework that because those plans apparently don't pencil. Engineering tells me that the first plan check has now been turned around on the McGee Preserve project as they move toward breaking ground on that. On the capital improvement front, the work has started at 500 Lagonda Way for the new police services building. So that's exciting. The park and ride expansion project, those plans have been completed. That project is ready to go to bid. They're continuing to work on the new storm drain master plan, preparing to go out to bid for the gazebo replacement at Hat McGee Ranch Park. This one is kind of exciting. The construction of the new San Ramon Creek footbridge at the town green is moving right along, and we've received word that they're planning to, now that the abutments are complete, they're planning to set that bridge in place next Thursday on the 11th. So that should be quite a sight to see as they do that. Moving on to maintenance services. Not a lot of new stuff to report there. As you can appreciate, they've been on storm watch for the last couple of weeks as weather warnings and rains have come and gone. They've been making various lighting repairs associated with some problems that we've been having at Sycamore Valley Park and the tennis courts at Monte Vista High School. So those are done. They've made some repairs to the West El Pintado bridge deck where it crosses San Ramon Creek. They have completed their tree trimming and rose pruning at Osage Station Park. And this week they have started pruning the crepe myrtle trees throughout the town. And they'll be rebidding the park's maintenance contract shortly. Last but not least, recreation, arts, and community services. Our staff is continuing to look for and find creative options to deliver services in keeping with health order requirements. It's very exciting. Our new spring 2021 activity guide actually landed in mailboxes last week. It's the first one that we've sent out in the mail in a while. It lists and highlights all of the classes, programs, and special events that we're looking forward to offering. And we have online registration available for all of our programs, events, and classes. Our RACS staff is continuing to find ways to provide the community with opportunities to decompress, to heal, to find fun within the activities that we have available to offer, whether they're online or in person. This year kicked off with the in-person Get Moving After Zooming camps, youth and adult winter tennis camps, and Skyhawks sports camp. Our senior meals program is continuing and is expanding now to include 2 refrigerated meals in addition to the 5 frozen meals that we've been providing. Our senior center staff is continuing to track social services and information and referral calls to gauge community needs and report to our senior advisory commission. Some of our virtual offerings include karate, a new Zumba Gold class, a new art gallery exhibit called Traces, the Danville Youth Council Stronger Than Hate Arts Showcase, Sketching with Teens, the preschool performance series, Comedy with Liz Grant, Valentine's Day virtual cooking workshop, and senior classes that have seen about 350 participants enrolled in our fall and winter sessions. Yeah. Our staff has also been working to orient 4 new commissioners, 2 on our Parks, Recreation and Arts Commission, 2 on our Senior Advisory Commission, planning forward to spring events and summer programming. And they've also started recruitment for our summer camps and aquatics staff. So For those who are interested and maybe looking at this live on live stream or online, you can get all of the latest news and information about our town government on our website. That website is www.danville.ca.gov. And you can also subscribe to our latest updates. So with that, I will conclude my report and be happy to respond to any questions that council might have.
Thank you so much for the report. Are there any questions for Joe? Robert?
Yeah. Hey, Joe, on that, the West Hill Pintado project, that's coming back in with the new density, does that fall into the density parameters that we worked with originally? Or are they looking for something out of the normal?
No, I think it all falls. Think that it all falls into the density parameters that we worked with originally. But you know, they're capitalizing on additional changes that have been made and ability that they have to seek density bonus. As you know, as is the case from time to time, the 37 unit project that they got approved may not be economically viable absent looking at adding units to it. So I think that's what's driving the request.
And does that come back to us?
I don't believe that it does. Well, let me walk that back. If it's going to be a PD rezoning and if it's going to change the existing PD zoning, then it would come back to you.
Okay. And then, okay, thank you.
Newell?
Joe, thanks again. We all appreciate to hear the updates. I mean, we live and breathe it as we go, but it's kind of nice to hear the total summary. I was going to make sort of a comment more than a question that obviously a huge success on our business support efforts for our grant program. But I would just note that the second phase occurred just before the shutdown. So many of the businesses say, you know, I can't qualify because I was shut down during that time. So I think we're just going to start to see a wave here in the next 2 weeks. And just to remind everybody that might be listening, for businesses, the state grant program, as you know, ended originally the first week of first Wednesday of January. They added another $500 million, and that extends now through January 8th. And it's still a fairly simple program. It's a true grant. It's either $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000. And it has nothing to do with whether you spent money. It has simply whether or not you lost at least 25% revenue in any one quarter last year. So it's one of those that there is no business that probably hasn't lost that. I just encourage, and I know Jill and Liana and our consulting team are all ready to help people do that. And it's not that hard, just with a little bit of guidance. I think we've got rock stars that are there to help. So I just encourage everybody to dive in and go for those state grants. Those are the taxes that we all pay that should come back to this community. But otherwise, awfully great news. Great to hear about Marcel. Hope that we can meet her one day in person. But it's fantastic to have somebody with her background step up in this role to replace Jeff. So thank you for that selection.
Karen?
I'd like to follow up on the project report. And thank you. I know that Robert brought that up already on El Pintado. I remember we all sat through the comments from the neighborhood, concerns about traffic, etc., with the corner that you're going around. So I'm a little surprised. I'm sure we'll get more feedback from that. So I guess I'm hoping that it will come back to us if we already had one look at it. I also want to know, are there changes in the state law that would affect that, or had it already gone so far that it's under current law and not under the changes that they're trying to make, which is normally to extend the amount of density and to cut back the amount of parking. And the parking was quite a discussion at the Planning Commission for that project. So that's my question. And my second question is so simple, I'll tack it on. So they're going to work on the bridge for Riverwalk and set it, but we won't be walking across, I understand, till probably middle of March across the bridge, or will it come very soon after that? They've indicated they've got about 6 months to that they expect those apartments to be grabbed by people moving to Danville or moving from a different house in Danville. So it's interesting to go through there, and it looks like they're doing a great job at meeting a lot of needs for our community.
So yeah, those let's see, couple of questions. So let me take a stab at it, and Rob may want to chime in here as well. So setting the bridge for Riverwalk is obviously the most visually prominent part of the construction that's going to happen with that project. Yeah. In terms of when people are going to be able to access the bridge from Diablo Road to the Town Green, that's going to be a while longer, because that site needs to be it needs to be safe for people to be able to traverse, and the approaches on either end of the bridge need to be completed as well. So okay. I think what's significant is the vast majority of the work has been done through the winter, and the weather hasn't kept that from happening. So I think we're very much on track, so that we're going to be able to have access to that bridge sometime this spring and be able to use it. With respect to your question about 375 West El Pintado, for that matter, any project, any new laws that have been passed by the legislature that are now effective would come into play with respect to things like density bonus or potential advantages that would be available to this or any developer. So, one of the things that the council has heard, I think, pretty loud and clear, pretty consistently over the last couple of years, has been our continuing to sort of scramble to make sure that our staff keeps abreast of what all of those changes are and the way that impacts our entitlement process. And Dave, who is on this, attending this meeting, has been doing an outstanding job of keeping track of all of those changes that, frankly make my head spin. As I recall, the last time we went through the entitlement process with 375 West El Pintado, I don't believe that they took advantage of any of the density bonus provisions that they could have taken advantage of. But if my recollection is faulty here, I'm sure that Mr. Ewing will correct me. But so they can take another pass at it to see if they can come up with a better plan. I don't know what that means in terms of unit sizes and overall project intensity, but I'm only here to give you an update on it tonight. And if and when it comes back before the council, you'll have plenty of opportunity to get answers to those questions.
If I could maybe tag on to Joe on both those points. On the El Pintado project, it's pretty preliminary at this point. I mean, Dave and I have had conversations with them. They're looking at everything from making it a density bonus to maybe making it a seniors project to a variety of things. So they are aware of the environmental work they'd have to do. If they change the project, they're aware of the neighborhood concerns. It's still the same property owner developer. So at this point, nobody could tell you exactly what it is they're going to do. So that will develop shortly. And then on the bridge, yeah, it will not open until, I think we're looking at second or third week in March. The bridge itself is basically a prefab 100-foot long bridge with, they're going to be a ginormous crane setting that thing in place. But once that's done, there's some additional concrete work that needs to get done. The lights for the bridge need to go in. So there's a lot of little stuff that needs to happen to take care of the entrances on both ends, the lighting, all that sort of stuff. So that's why there will be a delay in the ability of people to use it. But the cool part will be the bridge going in next week.
Yeah, and
Thank
I'll just hasten to add, because I know we have a very hands-on town council, that should you decide to casually drop by in order to watch that bridge lower into place, please do it from the library side. There won't be any access to the Riverwalk side of that while that's going on, because that's where the crane and all of the construction activity is going to be staging from. So watch from the library side and allow some distance.
I think our town manager knows all of us way too well. Dave.
Yeah. First, Joe, thanks to you and your staff for all you do, but more importantly, what you've been able to accomplish considering the environment that we're in today. A couple of comments. First, echoing what Neil shared regarding the second wave of grants. I'll put it in perspective. This is like easy money. I mean, to qualify is very easy. They've already qualified. It is a February 8th date. I think, Noah, you said January 8th, and didn't want to correct you, but it is February 8th. I think
February 8th, Dave, but it was the first Wednesday in January.
That is correct. Yeah.
And February.
But I know some of the business owners were, they not complained, but they felt that the first time they had to go through a lot of paperwork and it was a process. They went through it once. It's easier the second time, and the benefits are just enormous, and they should really take advantage of it. And any outreach that we can provide, I think, will be of benefit to them in the longer term. My other comment is regarding the pandemic itself, or the virus. And as you know, it's a little personal for me, being a healthcare professional. And what I've experienced in talking to the community is that there is no playbook. We've kind of had to toggle back and forth, figure it out. And the county is doing an excellent job considering this current situation. However, we are only in 1A, 1B, and we haven't even gotten to the exponential population that we are going to have to administer shots to. And what I would encourage and also advocate is that the town, and as well as the community, continue to push to have more sites in Danville. One of the reasons why Walnut Creek does so well is they have more healthcare entities and outlets and proximity to the population of healthcare professionals that can inoculate. We don't have that many healthcare entities. However, there is an opportunity for, I think, us to mobilize sites, to have mobile vaccination wagons. I mean, we've got seniors that are at home that can't get to a public health clinic or to their own docs. Why can't we go to them or make ourselves more available? Secondly, we have a number of healthcare professionals that are in the community that want to volunteer, and whether they're active or they're retired, they want to volunteer, and we need to really encourage more mobilization of our healthcare professionals so that we can get more people who can administer the shots when that vaccine is available, because it will be available, and it will be available from a number of different sources, and we just need to be positioned and prepared to administer those shots so that we don't continue to try to figure it out, and as a result, some of the implications to our community, to our schools, and to our businesses. Hopefully we can avoid those problems that we've experienced over the course of the last year.
Thank you, Dave, for that insight. I appreciate that. I just wanted to add on there, Joe, I had a couple questions in reference to the legislative efforts that are being done. You talk about density bonuses and the marketing rate, or the market rate, I should say. We're talking about Riverwalk, which was referred to as affordable so many times. I was just curious if you could tell us just a little bit of what they're considering the rental fees to be on those particular apartments.
Mayor Morgan, I think you raise an excellent point, and it's something that we've talked about at the Ledge Committee, and it's something that we're continuing to raise as an issue in in our overtures to ABAG and state HCD and others. And it's just quite simply the realization, the understanding, the reality that housing production in and of itself doesn't translate to affordability. And I think, that there's a misperception on the part of some that, housing that is denser, apartments, condominiums, is affordable. And, that in this state at this point in time is, is fallacy. So my understanding is that the Riverwalk units they're going to rent, studio units are going to start at just under $3,000 a month. And for the larger townhome units, those are going to rent for a little under $6,000 a month. Now, there are, of the total 144 units on that, as part of that community, 11 of those units are the units that have been that are affordable for the low or very low income individuals or families. And I apologize because I cannot tell you off the top of my head what those are going to rent for, but it'll be based on a percentage of what would translate into low or very low income for Contra Costa County. But only 11 of the 144 units are going to rent for that. So, I don't know about everybody else, but it's going to cost more to rent a studio than my house payment by a fairly substantial sum. So, again, I think that's part of the problem. The state is so focused on trying to promote housing, but they're not doing enough to promote affordable housing, because what they need to do is provide money that would replace the dollars that we lost when they took redevelopment away from us. And, some fairly sizable housing subsidies that need to happen in order to produce affordability. So apologize for the long drawn out answer, but that's where they can really help.
No, I appreciate the answer, Newell.
I just had a little, just to add, those rental rates. I mean, it's the project on Diablo is advertised as a luxury apartments. It is the most expensive one in Danville. The unit Joe was talking about is 480 square feet, and you can get that for $2,575 a month. And their largest unit is $5,945. They're beautiful units, but it's a luxury, and they are going quick.
And that is, to my point, is why we are advocating as a town as well to make sure that this is clarified, because we did get that point put across quite frequently, that was continuously saying it was affordable housing. I think it's what's affordable in per community that's important as well. So, Robert, did you have something else? I kept seeing your hand go up, and I wasn't sure. Sorry.
I didn't mention in my first question, but I had a chance to talk to Chief Myers, Fire Chief Myers. He wanted to remind the council that the fire department is doing vaccinations at the site there on Bollinger, and they have various dates throughout the year that they're administering. And apparently they could do up to 1,000 a day, apparently. But because they have some additional vaccinations and no people to use them on, the last couple of times they had 50 doses that they went to the police station next door, the building department, and anybody they could get their hands on to try to get a vaccine to them. So on their website, you can go on there as a standby, Santa Ramon Valley fireprotection.org, and there's a link that you can put your name in, your mother's maiden name, your date of birth, and if you have any underlying issues. And on the day of the vaccines, they will call you and give you up to 30 minutes to come to the fire department to get a vaccine with the additional doses that they may have. And like I say, the last two, they've had up to 50 additional doses. And then my question, Joe, is I know that, naturally last year we canceled all of our events. And this year, there seems to be a little bit of hope here in the future, maybe after the June, July dates. But Jim Edlin and Christine mentioned that they were canceling the Danville Dialogons, which comes in September. And I'm wondering if maybe we could, hold, unless there's a good reason why we're canceling something in September, when we could keep it sort of ongoing, give people some hope that the Danville Dialogons, might be able to bring people downtown. And if the world is a different place and we're able to hold an event, that, we could do that in September rather than cancel it in January, and or cancel it in July if the world hasn't changed as much as we'd like.
So that's a question, sir.
Yes, it is.
We are currently operating on the basis that there will be no live community events in 2021.
Got it.
So
Okay.
everything
Straight across the board.
Everything that we're seeing in terms of vaccine availability, the numbers of people who are being vaccinated, we don't think that it's prudent to be planning any large mass gatherings for the 2021 calendar year. I mean, when you consider the number of people that attend our community events, they number in the thousands, not in the hundreds. So everything from music in the park to car shows to street fairs. I mean, as much as I'd love to tell everyone that, we're going back to that, we, after having carefully considered it, have basically put the word out to our event organizers that we don't see that happening this year, and we're not getting any pushback from any of them.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Karen?
Thank you, Joe.
All right, so I will finish the conversation that was started on COVID, because a lot of people I know have been to the fire district, and they have so many stars you can't imagine. They have done an amazing job, and the people who have been there have been really appreciative of the efficiency of our fire district. The volunteers that are help them get the cars around to get to the vaccination, and the actual people giving them, who of course are skilled at doing so. So you have a lot of trust there, and all of you know Christy Dodge, our big fundraiser for Special Olympics. And so I had talked to her today about it, and the fact that they do have some potential for outstanding leftover doses and what they call their standby list, and that we are talking about some pretty compromised people, and they're not being prioritized right now. So the chief is just done an amazing job with the fire district. So we can all be proud of the San Ramon Valley Fire District and the emergency preparedness in our valley. So thank you for your report, Joe, on the fact that we're second highest in the county right now. So
I just want to echo what Council Member Stepper just said, and also to let the council know that I have provided that feedback to Chief Meyer as well. They've really been doing an outstanding job in terms of the way they have all of that organized, and the way they move people through. It's a tremendous resource that we have here in the valley, and they're just doing an amazing job with it. So we're very grateful for that.
thank you.
Yeah, I think the entire council would concur with that. That's they are doing a great job. And I'd also like to mention that DVC was having some issues with the county trying to administer and having long waiting lines and all that. And apparently that's been fixed. A few of those glitches have been fixed, and other people have been brought in. So anybody that was having a bad experience a few weeks back should now be seeing a little bit more of a smooth running ride out there. So just to let everybody know that. Are there any other questions or comments before we move on?
Well, I'll just mention that the chief did mention that if you have an underlying issue, but you haven't hit the 65-year age threshold, that if you mention that on the email, they'll move you to the top of the list when they make their phone call. So anybody with underlying risk is going to take precedent over anybody that is just, underage, but healthy.
Oh, that's good to know as well. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I know that we have somebody waiting to report to us under our communications. And that is our very own Jim Donnelly. He's our Danville representative for the Contra Costa Advisory Council on Aging. And he also wears another hat for us, which is the County Connection Citizens Advisory Committee. We'd like to welcome Jim and look forward to your report.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to give these reports. I'll start off with the Contra Costa Advisory Council on Aging, and thank you, council men and women, for again reappointing me for another 2 years on the ACOA, and it'll be also my pleasure for the next 2 years to serve as president of the ACOA, representing Danville and Alamo. Like everybody, we had challenges and disappointments and success this year. The ACOA usually has 10 monthly meetings a year. This year we missed one. We had 3 of them in person, and then we're able to get back up and do all the rest of them on the Zoom. We also, the ACOA is made up of 8 committees and work groups, and all of them quickly got back up and have been meeting monthly, if not more often, on Zoom to try to do what they can to help out in this challenging time. So a lot of things going on. We're trying to fill the ACOA. The ACOA is set up to be one representative from the 19 different cities and towns in the county, one from the senior nutrition program, and 20 members at large. Right now, we currently have 33 positions filled, and we have 3 more we'll be filling this month as soon as we get the Board of Supervisors approval. All of our at-large positions are filled. There's still some of the same cities we see on too many committees do not have members attending, but we're working on it. So we're reaching out. The 8 groups that make up committees and work groups that make up the ACOA: Health Work Group, Elder Abuse, Legislative Advocacy Work Group, a Housing Work Group, Technology Work Group, Transportation Work Group, and then we have a Planning Committee and a Membership Committee. All of them have done well, and we started out this year with this program of going back and looking at the roles and responsibility documents for each of these work groups that were put together when they were formed sometime a long time ago. Nobody knows for sure. So we had every one of the work groups go over and redo those and review them and update them so that they reflect what it is that these work groups are trying to do for the overall community. We've had to postpone our 2020 Contra Costa Conference on Aging, and we talked earlier about trying to do it late this year, but have decided now that it will likely take place in March of 2022. So, Elder Abuse Work Group went through a downturn and it's got a new chair. It's working together with Adult Protective Services. They put together a new presentation on all facets of elder abuse that they're now trying to roll out to different venues within the county to get the word out. Transportation Work Group produced a transportation infographic as well as their annual newsletter that's of use to a lot of people. And in 2021, we want to work closely with the area agency on aging to monitor and ensure that we're doing the most for the residents. Our planning committee helps the area agency on aging review all of their subcontractors' performance. So they'll come in and we've got a series of questions. And just working on how we can get the word out for people to, especially in seniors, protect themselves and move ahead in what we see as a lot of challenging areas ahead of us. So that pretty much is it for the Area Agency on Aging, or the Area Advisory Committee on Council on Aging.
Okay, would you like to, and that's also for the County Connection Citizens Advisory as well?
I'll go ahead and give that one's brief. All right. as much as I would like to talk about the area advisory council on aging, the county connection has unfortunately been one of the more disappointing committees I have worked on. It's supposed to have 13 members. This year, the biggest we had in the meeting was 5. We have 5 of our communities do not have members representing them on that advisory council, and therefore we aren't able to do a whole lot. We had 4 meetings, 2 of which were in person and 2 were via Zoom. We were able to provide some input for the revised user's manual for paratransit, and moving forward, there's going to be a lot of difficult decisions to be made. County Connections already put out there, they have 3 different decision points, whether they cut $3, $5, or $7 million from their budget for this year. So it's an important committee. I wish that it could be an effective working committee. Having said that, the last 2 years I've been the chair of the committee, and in too many meetings I've been the only person at the meeting besides staff. I've stepped down as chair because of just getting more busy with some of the other more recent things I've gotten involved with, and the fact that my service at this committee ends in June, and I do not plan to reapply for it. So,
Are there any questions for Jim at all?
Yeah, I'll just comment on the county connection portion of it. It has been disappointing. Apparently there's some state law that requires like a county connection to have a citizens advisory committee, just like the Transportation Authority has a citizen advisory committee. In December, the board, or November and December, the board met to look at what this committee should actually do. And in the past, it was just a group of people that got together. They would review our packet and then comment on it. But over the years, that had diminished, and they lost a lot of participation because there wasn't a great way to offer the information back to the board. So we've changed that. We've reached out to each jurisdiction. And it's a little bit tougher during COVID to get people to apply for this. But as of November and December, we actually created stronger guidelines, and the board was very supportive of the Citizen Advisory Committee. Jim has just lived through the worst portion of it, but I could certainly understand if he wanted to step down. But the future of that advisory committee looks pretty bright, and they will actually have input to the board that we will look at and factor into each and every one of our decisions.
So Jim, hang in there. Karen.
Jim, you just interact with the seniors in so many ways, as we learned again in the interview process, whether it's driving them or helping them. So could you just tell me, from your viewpoint, what do you think has been the most difficult thing you've seen for seniors during COVID shelter in place?
They're getting so isolated. So many of them they're not comfortable interfacing with other people. That's the hardest thing I've seen. And I've been, even though my wife yells at me for, I've been driving people at least twice a week, even through once we started back up on the pandemic, and yeah, they're just, I drove a woman from Rossmore over to Contra Costa College to get her first vaccination, and stood in line with her for an hour and a half, an 86-year-old lady. And she was a chatterbox the whole way back and forth, because here's someone in person to talk to. So yes, the isolations, it's really, really scary with all of this. We know it's difficult, like Mobility Matters is trying to do, get people to vaccinations. We also have an incredible woman in this county called Debbie Toth that's working with CC Health to get vaccinations to all these 6-packs, as they call them, these 6 or less board and care facilities in the county where the people can't get out to get the vaccines. They're going out and moving from 1 to 1, but there's 320 of them in the county. So it's the challenges that they're there. They're just really magnified. So,
Well, Jim, I appreciate your answer because as we go forward, we'll be looking for your astute observations and what it means to our seniors, because it's not just that they aren't comfortable with Zoom. You just hit it on the head. They're not comfortable being around people right now.
right.
So thank you for what you do.
And I know later on this week, we're going to try to do a senior Zoom lunch hour thing, reaching out to at least try to interact with them. So, oh, by the way, I should say I'm still interested in transportation. I'm still on the Senior Mobility Action Council, and I just applied to, if you need it, to try to represent Danville on the CCTA. So we'll see what happens. All right.
Thank you, Jim. How are you reaching those seniors that do not have internet connection or emails? How are you getting them to services or contacting them?
Well, Meals on Wheels is doing a lot of it. All right, and not just Meals on Wheels Diablo region. Meals on Wheels West County is also reaching out telephone wise a lot. And and even though they're delivering food, there's a whole lot of proper social distancing of people talking. Because again, the people, here's somebody at the door they can talk to, they can interact with.
Right, right.
But
Jim,
we had the program before in the You Are Not Alone, but I haven't heard much about that. And how, again, it was getting the names of the people to try to contact and talk to, which was difficult.
Sure. Are there any other questions or comments for Jim? Jim, I just want to thank you so much for all your services to the seniors. You go above and beyond, and I know that they are so appreciative of it, as we are for the town of Danville, for all you do for our seniors. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here this evening and for the report. We so appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, and have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 8, which is our public hearing. And I'd also like to mention that at this point, the input from our residents as well as citizens of Danville is welcome, as well as from other areas as well. This evening, what we're going to be doing is item number 8.1, and 8.1 is to consider introduction of ordinance number 2021-01, repealing the existing chapter 32-76 of the Danville Municipal Code and adding a new chapter 32-76 to the Danville Municipal Code related to the accessory dwelling units, which is ZTA 20-0001. And we're going to be hearing this evening from a presentation from our Chief of Planning, which is David Crompton. And I see David is joining us, but I do not see David yet.
Yeah, I think, Maria, I believe you need to let me start. There we go.
Here you go.
All right, great. Well, thank you and good evening, Mayor Morgan and council members. As you just described, Mayor Morgan, this is a new ordinance. It would basically repeal our existing ADU ordinance that was, I think, just approved back in 2017 based on new state laws at that time. And it would replace it in its entirety with a new ordinance. It's necessary due to a number of laws. There are actually 5 new state laws that were booked towards the end of 2019 that went into effect in 2020. It had been somewhat confusing going forward from there because, trying to compile the 5 different laws and what took precedent when there were conflicts between the various laws. But ultimately, back in October, the state HCD came forward with a pamphlet which clarified much of what the laws meant to local jurisdictions. And so I think now we're pretty clear and ready to go ahead and adopt this ordinance. I did want to mention that after the council's adoption, if you do adopt it, we have to submit it to HCD, and they have to review it and confirm that the ordinance is in compliance with state law. So if we're back here in a few months, that we have to make a couple of tweaks to it based on the input from HCD. So I'm going to go through the major provisions that are basically dictated by state law that we don't have much latitude on. And there are a couple of items that I will describe that we local jurisdictions do have some ability and some latitude on how we want to handle it. So the first item is for the review process. And under state law, any ADU, whether it's attached or detached, and meets all of the development standards, that would be including setbacks, height, sizes, etc., have to be approved ministerially. And so that's basically through an applicant would go straight to building for building permits, and planning staff would plan check to verify that the ADU is in compliance with all of our development standards. It's similar to what we do currently. Right now, any ADU that's 1,000 square feet or less is ministerial, but we do require that ADUs that are greater than 1,000 square feet go through an administrative review process. So that would include a notification of surrounding property owners, even if it does meet all development standards. So that would be gone. They would all be ministerial if they meet all the development standards. There is provision in the draft ordinance. It's 76 or 3276-5 that establishes some general development standards, including design. There's been some back and forth on this. The ordinance allows, state law allows for ordinances to establish some design guidelines as long as they are objective, not subjective. And so what we've included in the ordinance is a requirement that new ADUs match the primary residence as far as siding and roofing materials and colors. We think that's fairly objective, and we think that that will be allowed by the state. So that's in your ordinance. As far as setbacks, this is a major change from previous state law. Under the current state law, all ADUs, whether they are attached or detached, can go to within 4 feet of a side and rear property line. They still do need to meet the setbacks for the frontages, the primary front, and for corner lot for the primary and secondary frontages. But for the rear, they are a minimum of 4 feet. As far as height, the state law requires that local jurisdictions cannot limit the height of an ADU less than 16 feet. And that is whether it's attached or detached. The town's ordinance brings some elements from our previous ordinance, and it would actually go beyond that and allow for higher limits for certain attached and detached ADUs. So if an ADU is detached, but it meets the same setbacks that would be required for a primary residence, so much greater setback, probably 10, 15, or 20 feet side yard setbacks, and it's detached, it can go under this ordinance. It would be allowed to go up to 24 feet in height, and that would be something that would allow for the ADU to be on top of, say, a 2-car garage, something that we've approved in the past. But it would be far enough away from surrounding property or property lines that it wouldn't have a privacy impact. And then under our ordinance, if an ADU is attached to the primary residence and meets the same setbacks that the primary residence would need to meet, it could go up to 35 feet in height, the same as an addition to the house. So that seems to make sense. As far as size requirements or limitations for ADUs, under state law, they've set kind of a statewide limit of 1,200 square feet for any attached or detached ADU, but they do allow for local jurisdictions to modify that to go to greater sizes if we would like. And so what is in the proposed ordinance, we would allow for the 1,200 square foot ADU, whether attached or detached, for most lots, for any lot that is less than an acre in size or is zoned less than R40, which is the 1 acre lot size. We would allow for up to a 2,000 square foot ADU, which is what we currently allow for ADUs that are on larger lots that are at least an acre in size and zoned for R40 or larger. So R40, R65, or R100, or for our agricultural A2 zoning categories. The state has thrown in a new type of ADU. It's called a junior ADU, or junior accessory dwelling unit. And so this is in addition to ADUs. So junior ADU is defined as a conversion of existing floor space within a home of up to 500 square feet. So no more than 500 and no expansion. It has to be conversion of existing floor space. And that can include conversion of existing garage space in a single family residence. So the next two categories, parking and occupancy, are areas where the local jurisdictions do have some ability to make a determination on what we want to do locally. So as far as parking, under our current ordinance and under state law, in most cases, we can't require new parking for an ADU. There are some ways that we can do that, but we've chosen not to do that in the past. Under the new state law, you cannot, for an ADU, you cannot require replacement parking either. So if an ADU was an expansion of a residence that incorporated a garage, we couldn't require that those two garage parking spaces be required. However, for junior ADUs, they do allow for, strangely enough, they do allow for replacement parking. And so the way that the recommended ordinance is written is that we would not require replacement parking for any, and we have some reasons why we are recommending that we could go into more, but it seems to make sense to us that just across the board, make it simpler for everybody to not require the additional parking or replacement parking for either ADUs or junior ADUs. Then on occupancy, we have a little bit of room there as well. So under previous state law and the current state law, we cannot require that an owner occupy either a ADU or a primary residence. So we don't have the ownership requirement. But for the new JADU, it does allow for jurisdictions to allow for occupancy if there is a ADU and a junior ADU and a primary residence. So you can do up to three living units. It allows for an owner occupancy for either the JADU or the primary residence, if that is what we desire. Again, the ordinance is consistent with our existing ordinance in that it would not require an owner occupancy requirement in either of those cases. We did receive a letter today, I believe you all had a copy of, from the California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Fund, and they called out a couple of points that they believe was inconsistent with state law. One was regarding the design standard that I previously mentioned. We do believe that we are okay there. We believe that the objectives are the development design standards are objective as far as the siding, roofing, and colors. The other, let's see, I don't have it in front of me. The other point that they raised was regarding section 3276.12 in the ordinance that talks about the statewide exemption. So under the new state law, there's an exemption that any residential lot in the state is required to allow up to a minimum 800 square foot ADU. And if the development standards you have in place disallow that, then you have to waive or modify those development standards to the extent possible to allow for at least an 800 square foot ADU. They point out that under that section, we say that in that case, the development standards under section 3276.6 and 7 are waived, but it points out that we should also include section 3276.5, which are the general development standards, and we agree with that. So we would recommend that if you go forward with a approval or a motion, that you modify that section 3276.12 to also include 3276.5 as being overridden if we need to allow for an 800 square foot ADU. And that concludes my presentation. We're recommending that you approve ordinance 2021-01 and be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Karen? You're on mute right now, sorry.
I am unclear on item, I don't know what it was, 7, about the parking, why we're not requiring replacement parking. There's apparently some cases you're saying we are allowed to do so, being as we're walking around so much around town and there are so many second units right now, and a lot of them don't have enough parking as it is with the additional spaces. So
Yeah,
could you
okay.
answer that one again? I don't know
Yeah,
why we
yeah.
would not require what we can.
Yeah, we can go a little bit more into depth on that. So under the previous law, it basically said that you cannot require parking for ADUs and under certain circumstances, and it revolved around their proximity to transit and transit lines. I think it's a half-mile radius, and so that would mean that we could require 1 parking space for ADUs that are outside of certain radius away from our transit lines.
Okay,
We didn't do that because it creates some confusion. We'd have to put together a map, and so we'd have to treat different properties differently. And it really doesn't have much of an effect because it only requires that you provide 1 parking space, and it requires that you allow driveway parking and tandem parking and setbacks, even if it blocks garages. And so didn't see where we were really going to get much out of that requirement for part of the town and not other parts of the town.
well, more people will ask you questions about that because I don't, we don't have anything that's within this half a mile very often of transit. So for us to keep another spot, I think is important to the neighborhoods. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Dave?
Yeah, a couple questions. And first, Dave, thanks for the comprehensive report. It's a little confusing and a little conflicting between a JADU and an ADU. And I guess my first question is there another version of what's going to be introduced at the state level that is going to clean this up? And does it make sense to pause until we get a real clean version and some consistency in what's being proposed here? Or is it your understanding and perspective, let's get moving and we'll fine tune it as we go along?
I think that the direction we received from HCD in October cleans up pretty much everything as far as we know. Again, we'll have to submit it to HCD and get some feedback. I think that, I think that there's, if you read through it, there's some things that don't make a lot of sense, regarding the way we treat JADUs versus ADUs and the, occupancy and parking restrictions being different. That's just the way it is. And I don't think that that's going to clean up any, any more clean.
The second question is regarding the HOAs. As you know, in our communities, there's many HOAs and they have height restrictions and other limitations that are probably inconsistent with what the state is recommending, as well as what we want to put in place as well. How are the HOAs complying this change?
So we have dozens of HOAs throughout town. They all have their own requirements and restrictions and standards. We have a townwide standard that we impose. The state law specifically preempts HOAs from having restrictions from having requirements that are more strict than state law. And so what HOAs really are going to need to do is follow state law and or follow the town's ordinance.
That's a tough one, but I understand. State they preempt what's going on in the community, but it's going to be a real change, and we'll probably have some impact on how communities are currently, I guess, positioning themselves and how they look.
I would only comment that that's not a new provision. That state law has preempted PCNRs for many years on ADUs and second dwelling units. So it's just a continuation of that policy.
Okay, thank you.
Newell?
Dave, thanks for moving this forward. A couple of questions. One, we have the definition for manufactured home in there, but yet there's nothing in the ordinance about it. Do we have to have that? What is it? I'm just sort of concerned about what it is.
Well, I guess the way the ordinance is written is that there's a definition and there's nothing in the ordinance that preempts or precludes manufactured homes, because that would be in violation of the state law.
So on that manufactured home, so that could be, it says with or without foundation, which means without foundation, it means it's totally portable. So is state law say that, I didn't see that part, that totally portable pre-manufactured units are allowed?
I'd have to go back and look at the, Rob, it looks like maybe he wants to add in, but I'd have to go back and look at that section specifically. And if there's more limitations that you'd like to see, we could add those in, you know, if the state law allows it.
I mean, I would like to tighten this up, because what it, you know, the way I read it, I could have a trailer, right? I can get a modular trailer, put it on some jacks so it doesn't bend, not a permanent foundation, but it's really a mobile home. That's the way I read that. There are really cool, as we know, pre-manufactured ADUs. You know, they're wood frame units. They're really cool designs, almost sort of like our pre-designed ones that we have, but they actually pre-make them. They put real foundations in, and they are aesthetically, you know, compatible. So Rob, maybe you know anything?
Pretty sure that definition is straight out of the state law. So it would still, if it was a manufactured home, it would still need to meet the other, you know, setback height, you know, et cetera. I mean, we can look into it further, but I'm virtually certain that's taken straight out of the statute.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, you know, if it wouldn't mind, just for caution, is to revisit that. And if there is any wiggle room that we have to tighten it up, you know, and meet state law, I'd like to see that. The other thing, just a small housekeeping thing, you know, in the staff report, junior ADUs, we listed the abbreviation JADU, but in the ordinance, it doesn't. It has ADU as that. We might want to do that. And on the parking, you know, I share the same concern as Karen. I think it's easier to write it to say what the absolute minimum we can get away with for requiring parking, and then say, however, for those within this transit thing, you know, here's this exemption. I would rather write it that way. You know, we live in a neighborhood, forget about this, you know, as Joe mentioned in his report, this sort of social equity, you know, issue being thrown at us and other communities is really to slap communities in the face for building great communities and investing in real estate infrastructure and things like that. And, you know, taking away the parking on where we have an average house price in Danville now, it's almost average, it's almost $1.6 million. And having people come in and essentially do all of this, you could have 2 complete rental units, virtually no parking the way I read it. You know, I think that's a road that we should be extremely cautious on. What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly do that. You know, it's going to require probably some type of a map where people will know, you know, if they're within the buffer zone from the transit areas around town. So, you know, we can do that. I also want to clarify that there's 2 options. There's 2 issues related to parking. So there's the one that you're talking about, that is we can require 1 parking space for a additional parking space on a property that has an ADU outside of the transit corridors. There's also the junior ADU issue, where for junior ADUs, we can require replacement parking. So if a junior ADU comes in and they want to convert a garage to an ADU, we can require that that garage parking space be provided on site, not necessarily construction of a new garage, but there be spaces on site for replacement.
Right. And I think we as a council should be considering both of those. And, you know, when we look at that transit corridor, we need to find out and state what the definition is currently, because our transit, our area is not increasing, it's been decreasing over time because of that low ridership. So if it gets, while we might need a map to show with the current quarters, it should have an asterisk. However, at this point in time in history, if the routes, headways, however that's being completely defined, we ought to do that. Because I think that parking is just going to be that rub. And while we know ADUs have been a by right issue from the state for, gosh, probably 20 plus years or greater, I don't think we have to go any further than what the state law is, because people have done a great job on putting these in for the most part. And we're at the precipice of a cliff with given that we have to meet state law, that if we go too far, I think we will be the ones guilty of that last step. So.
Yeah, so I think what we would do is create a map. It wouldn't be part of the ordinance because we wouldn't want to come in and redo the ordinance every time that we have a change in our transit corridors. So it would be a reference for staff and public.
Yeah, because you should be aware that it's not just transit corridors. It's, for instance, any neighborhood. It's with a proximity to any neighborhood that has a permit parking program. So, bus lines may go away. Right now, we only have one neighborhood with a permit parking program over on the west side. But if you were to add more, that would expand the area where we couldn't require parking. So that's kind of the reason why in the last go around in the ordinance a few years ago, we didn't get into this, because it's difficult to track. But just so long as you're aware that that will be a living, breathing issue going forward.
Right, and that reminds us, Rob, I'm glad you mentioned that. Just as on our checklist, we told that one neighborhood that we have those parking restrictions, that once the high school, we invested the money to build those spaces, that we'd come back to revisit that, just to make sure we still do that, as whether or not it's still required. Thank you.
Dave, I think, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question. For any one lot, what's the maximum number of JADUs and ADUs that could occupy the space?
You can only have one JADU and you can only have one ADU. So you can have the primary residence. So you can have 3 separate living units on a single family parcel.
Okay. So that compounds this issue of parking if one decides to have both a JADU and an ADU on the same property. Okay, thank you.
Robert, did you have any questions, or would you like me to move on? You're good?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I'm lip reading now, so I kind of read what you said.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and move on then, if you don't mind. But public hearings obviously invites public comment as well. We're going to open up the public for comment right now. So please click or raise your hand on the raise hand option if you have any questions. Marie Sinceri will let me know, and we'll go ahead and let you ask the questions. Marie, are there any questions from the public?
Yes, there are several individuals with the hands raised. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can start the timer. And then we will call on the first individual. Please confirm that you can see the
I can see the timer. I can see the timer, yes.
Okay, perfect. The first individual is John Minot, and we're going to allow him to speak. And if you could state your name, that would be wonderful.
Hey, this is John Minot. Good evening. I'm a member of East Bay for Everyone. East Bay for Everyone is an all-volunteer organization with members across Alameda and Contra Costa counties, including in the San Ramon Valley. We believe most fundamentally, California is a great place, and it should be possible for anyone who wants to live here to do so. As such, we advocate for building new housing at quantity at all income levels. We are starting to engage with communities, including Danville, on how they can welcome more neighbors in new ways over the coming RHNA cycle, and how that can work with their communities without being a disruption or sacrifice. So with that background, I wanted to thank Mr. Crompton and staff for putting together a thoughtful ordinance on ADUs, not just mechanically saying the state told us to do this, here's what we're doing. but thinking about their potential and trying to adapt an ADU ordinance to your own unique circumstances, allowing families the flexibility to use their own parcels in a way that makes sense for them. So kudos, thanks very much. Hope to see it move forward. Also, I want to give kudos for your existing program offering those pre-approved ADU plans in local architectural styles, which is also really helpful for people. The one thing I wanted to note, you brought up the point about the question of design, about requiring architectural coordination. I know that you feel, Mr. Crompton, that is compliant with state standards, that it be objective. I'm not sure I know what coordination means. I think it needs to be something that reasonable people, when they look at the standards, cannot disagree on. When I wonder what is a coordinating color, what is a coordinating material, I feel like there could be reasonable disagreement on that. However, in practice, if the planning department approves people when they're trying to apply these standards in good faith, it probably will be fine. I do think it is a potential risk for the town in terms of compliance. That is all I had to say. Thank you very much again for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your comments. And the next person, Marie?
Okay. The next, excuse me, the next individual is Jason Zimmerman.
Welcome, Jason.
Hi there. Thank you very much. My name is Jason Zimmerman. I'm here as not just an individual citizen, but as a representative from our Homeowners Association board. I represent the Homeowners Association here in Glenwood Homes. We're over here off of Hartford between Camino Amigo and Rutherford. It's a group of about 60 homes. I apologize that we seem to be a little bit late to this party, in the sense that this ship has sailed and is a long ways away from port in terms of these regulations. Our CC&Rs that exist here in our neighborhood specifically prevent this sort of building in our neighborhood, and we'd like to preserve that as much as we can. Sounds like that's going to be a tough uphill battle. But with that, with that in mind, we had a couple of questions as a homeowners association that we wanted to ask. The first question being, what opportunity do the citizens have to participate in the crafting of the ordinance? Is there a process where we can work to offer our commentary on the ordinance itself beyond just this council meeting? Perhaps as the draft is put forward. And should I just go through the questions all at once?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and answer when we go back to, give you the opportunity to answer at the end. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that was the first one. Second one, is there anything the town can do or provide to our association to assist us in controlling ADU activity in our neighborhood? Is there anything you can do to give us some guidance or help in how we manage this process going forward? Second one, third question. Again, I apologize if these questions have been asked in the past. This is new to all of us over here at the association. So is there any action that the town can take to challenge these laws from a legal basis, whether that's constitutional, contract law basis, in the sense that we've entered into a binding obligation with regard to our CC&Rs, and now the state is overriding that contract, and what's the constitutionality of that situation, those sorts of things. Barring those things, what would the town recommend we do as an association to be able to exert some control over ADU activity in our neighborhood? Our neighbors have spoken pretty robustly that they're not happy about this, and they'd like to prevent it as much as possible. And then the last question was related to something I believe it was Rob Ewing said about the parking permit issue in one of the neighborhoods over here on the west side. I'd like to understand what that meant, because obviously the parking piece of this is a challenge, and we were wondering if there's ways to use parking regulations to help put some boundaries on this stuff. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Jason, thank you. I wanted to kind of let you know as well that when we're done with all the public questions and comments, we'll bring it back to staff or to to the town staff as well to answer those questions that you have. So thank you so much for posing the questions. We will be answering those. So we have another speaker, Marie.
Yes. The next individual is Lou Delman.
Okay, Lou, welcome. Lou, we don't hear you. You must be on mute.
Jason's still on mic and Lou is muted.
Okay, so Jason, we need you to get off the mic.
There you
Drop the mic, Jason. Thank you. Lou, are you there? Still on hear you, Lou. Marie, are we have him ready to go? He's,
Yeah, good evening.
oh, there you are. Hello there.
Sorry about that. I was all over the place trying to figure out how to unmute.
No worries.
So the question that I have is very simple, and that is, does anybody know if the ADUs requirements, any of the elements about being able to put ADUs into place, meet any of the state requirements for what they are looking for in terms of requirements for housing? Do ADUs count for that?
Okay. Is that your only question, or did you have some more that you'd like to ask? Because like I said, we'll be answering those questions when we bring it back to staff.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. No, that is the only question.
Okay, Lou, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Marie, is there anybody else?
Okay, the next individual, no last name, but is identified by Gail.
Hello, Gail. Would you mind stating your name, your full name for the record, please? Gail, are you there?
Lou is still on.
Gail is using an older version of Zoom and will need to be promoted to panelist to allow to talk. So that's the message I got here. So I'm going to go ahead and promote her to panelist.
But with no video.
Correct, because the public can see the timer screen. Gail, I see you. You'd need to unmute.
Marie, is there something I need to do to mute?
Is that you, Lou?
Yeah.
I just disabled.
No, go. It's okay.
I'm Kelly Dyer. I live on the west side. Have any of the manufactured ADU homes been pre-approved by Danville?
Okay, that's one question. Is that your question?
Yes.
And your name is Kelly, correct?
Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y.
Great, Kelly. I'll tell you what, if you have any other comments or questions, we'll go ahead and write those down as well. We will be answering those in a moment. Is that your only question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll get back to you on the answer to that, okay? Thank you so much for your question. Marie, do we have any other questions?
There are no other hands raised. And one moment, and I will
Well, I guess you're there.
stop video, and then we'll go ahead and stop sharing on my.
Okay, so seeing that there isn't any more public comment, I'm going to go ahead and close this public comment portion of our meeting and bring it back to the council and staff for comment and or to answer the questions. Maybe we could go to Dave Crompton first to answer some of the questions that were posed.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I will answer these questions. So the first speaker was John. He talked about the design standards and their objectivity. I think we see them being fairly objective, matching colors, materials. So, the type of roof, the type of siding, etc. I think it's pretty clear. We look at what's on the primary residence and we try to match that or coordinate that to the extent that we can. Jason, questions about HOA and CCNRs. Again, the state law completely exempts local HOAs and CCNRs from imposing standards that are more difficult to construct than the state law. Rob, maybe you want to tag onto that a little bit about, what anybody could do to try to address that. As far as the citizen participation, basically what we're doing here is bringing our ordinance into compliance with state law. So there's not really a lot of room for discussion about how we want to craft this. We did where we could. We went beyond state law to comply with kind of what we've been doing for years with our ordinance sizes and heights and that type of thing. The parking permit issue, that was an issue around the high school that dealt with student parking in the neighborhoods. That was a concern to those residents. And so there was some limitations put on that, especially now that the high school is building more on-site parking. I have not been directly involved with that situation, so Rob or Joe might want to tag onto that. Regarding the Lou's question about state affordable housing and arena, yes, the ADUs can be used towards our housing requirements in the future. For example, 20 qualifying ADUs can equal 1 acre at 20 units per acre. So they are useful, and they have reduced our need to find additional lands in the past, and we are counting on that in the future. I think what state law requires us to do is to do a survey of existing rental rates for ADUs in town to kind of figure out what size qualifies for affordable levels. And so that's something we'll be doing as we develop our housing element over the next 2 years or so. As far as the Kelly's question about our ADU program, we have what we're calling our garden cottage program. We hired several architects that developed 3 different units. There's about a 650 square foot unit, a 850, and about 1,000 square foot unit, each with different elevation treatments. There's a craftsman, a Spanish style, and a Mediterranean style. And so those are on our website. They're completely produced and plan checked, so they're ready to download. And to basically all the property owner needs to do is to develop a site plan to show where it's going to be on the property and come in for building permits so that you can get on our inspection schedule. Again, that's on our website, and they're ready to be downloaded now. And that was all I had.
Yeah, let me.
Rob, did you want to address some of those?
Yeah, let me. I mean, Dave hit all the high points, but going back to John's comment about the design standards, again, the statute does allow us to apply objective design standards, and the HCD advice letter talks about that and what qualifies. And I think Dave and the Planning Commission have narrowed that down enough that we meet that standard. If HCD disagrees, they'll tell us. So we'll find out, but we think that works. On Jason's questions about what the their HOA can do. So there's nothing the town could do on that front. This is not the first time the state has stepped in and preempted CC&R provisions. So for instance, they did it probably 30 years ago on small family daycare. So those of you who've been on the Planning Commission in the past may remember you'd seen applications for folks wanting to open a daycare in their home for 6 or fewer children. A lot of CC&Rs prohibited that. They prohibited any business activity in the house. And the state stepped in and said, we don't care what your CC&Rs say, this is a societal need, so we're going to preempt those. So it's the same thing they're doing here. Whether or not the state has the right to step in and in effect void that contractual relation between those homeowners. I've never seen any litigation on that anywhere in the state. I would suggest to Jason and anybody else on their board, if they want to talk to their HOA attorney, they could look into that. But I've never seen any litigation challenging that, and this is not the first time that the state has done that. Jason also had some questions about what they can do as an HOA to control this. I don't know about their HOA. Most HOAs have a design review committee. Their design review committee can certainly look at these things, but as Dave has said more than once, they're going to be subject to the same rules that we are in terms of looking at these things. And again, and Jason asked the question about public participation, where they can weigh in, and Dave's talked about the process we've been through. I think it's also important to remember that all of these laws went into effect January 1 of 2020. So since then, for the last 13 months, these are the rules that we have been applying, because the state's rule is you default to ours, whether you like it or not. So these rules have been in effect for at least 13 months now, and have been what has been applied. So the only changes that we're making here are a couple of tweaks to clarify some things. And I think we've always tried to, in the past, take those state laws and put them into our own zoning ordinance, so that it's easier for people to understand, easier for people to follow, instead of trying to dig them out of the middle of the government code, which is not easy. And again, with regard to the parking permit situation, the only reason I brought that up is that on this question of whether we can or cannot require parking, part of the state law says you cannot require parking if you're within half mile of a transit line. It also says we cannot require parking for an ADU if it's a property in which there is a street parking permit program. So for that one neighborhood we have over on the west side near the high school, if one of those property owners came through with an ADU, we could not require them to provide any parking because they have a parking permit program. That's the only particular relevance of that.
The only other thing I would add to, for Jason, is that, we have spent a year understanding the state law and crafting this ordinance. So, we'd be more than happy to walk you through, get together with you and walk you through, to understand the ordinance. And in addition, the other thing the town obviously does is we issue the building permits. And so it's our job to make sure that whatever building permits are issued in your neighborhood are compliant with the state law and with our ordinance.
Yeah, and we could also provide links to anybody to State Housing Community Development Department, HCD, has a lot of info on their website, with their interpretation of what the law means, a lot of FAQs, that kind of stuff, some of which specifically address this HOA CC&R issue. So we could certainly point Jason to those items.
That's good information. Good to know. Let's go back now to the council. Robert?
Good. Dave, thanks for the information. So let's say we have a situation where a secondary unit is going to be built on a property, and the homeowner wants to build that unit within the 4 feet of the property line. But the property is large enough that that's 4-foot setback could be increased to 10 foot and still make the unit work. Would we suggest the 10-foot setback, or would we allow the 4-foot setback?
We can't require them to be more than 4 feet away from a side and rear property line.
Okay, because
they have a right. If they wanted to do 4 feet, they would have a right to do that, and we couldn't tell them they can't.
Got it. Okay. And then when we have a corner situation, and I happen to have one in my neighborhood where it's a 750 square foot secondary unit on a fairly predominant corner, very dominant looking corner, and I got the structure right on the corner. They weren't required to do a landscape plan or a tree plan to soften up the unit. There is no requirement to state law that would require a homeowner to do that.
To submit a landscape plan? No, we don't believe that would be a development standard we could impose on a ADU.
When we look at new subdivisions and we have neighbors, existing neighborhoods, a new subdivision, we're always very aware of windows looking into the neighbor's yard. We try to soften it up with trees. We try to be sensitive to, the new subdivision looking into the existing subdivision. We don't have any of that here in secondary units. And my concern is that, part of the complaints I think we're going to get from people in the neighborhood is, a 4-foot setback is measured from the foundation, not the overhang. So that overhang is already 2 foot closer to the property line. And is there anything we can do to, during the review process to be aware of, where the position of the secondary unit is in relationship to the existing neighbors?
We have very little discretion on that. I mean, we could, when somebody comes in, we could talk to them, give them ideas, but basically, you know, if they want to submit a ADU 4 feet away from a property line that's 16 feet high, they have a right to do that. There are some provisions that we've carried over from our last ordinance that talks about balconies and decks and that type of thing, that we wouldn't allow a balcony or a deck higher than, that's above the ground more than 6 inches for an ADU that's closer than 10 feet to the property line. So we have that built in to try to keep the activity areas in front rather than between an ADU and the property line, you know, as far as patio or deck usage for folks that live there.
You might also recall that when council authorized doing this, the garden cottage project, where we pre-designed to make it easier for folks, one of the reasons that we did that was those pre-designed ADUs try and address some of those concerns, like window placement, eaves, things like that. So, you know, we were hoping that incentivizing people by basically giving them free plans so they don't have to hire an architect would incentivize them to use a model that would address some of those concerns.
Yeah, you know, Rob, the only reason I ask is, you know, we have a situation here. We all know how important AD units are today and how important they'll be in the future towards our housing numbers. So literally, we've taken away the entire appeal process, is what it sounds like.
They're building permits.
Yeah, and what role does the design review board play in the approval process?
They play zero role in the average citizens. Again, you know, we did because we can control our garden cottage program. We took those two through design review, and we did design them so that windows that face property lines are raised, so they're, you know, addresses the privacy issue. But for individuals that want to come in with a custom ADU, you know, these minimum state development standards are all that we can apply.
Yeah, thank you.
Newell?
A couple of things. One, just on the last comment, that we've never had design review for ADUs, only in new developments. There is no design review for single family houses. But design review is pretty minimal in Danville. State law hasn't changed that. State law has not changed ADUs as a whole. They were still by right. It's just expanded a little bit to where you can do this junior and a regular ADU. That's the big change, that you could have up to 3 units. But the 4 foot, let's just be clear. While the state says you can build at 4 feet, building code says you can't have any openings, any windows, or anything in that wall unless it's 5 foot away from the property line. It's always been that way. That's a fire safety issue. Secondly, the fire code has always required on residents to have a 5 foot pathway as the minimum setback on a house. That's for access. I don't know how that goes. So somehow they're superseding that. That code needs to be changed, but the fire code hasn't changed. So if you were less than 5 foot away from a property line, on any property line, for any ADU, it can't have windows, it can't have doors, any of those things, because it is a fire rated wall at that point.
Yep.
Same thing, the roof has to have, there's a way you have to detail that overhang all the way till it gets 5 feet away to fireproof that. But I would also say that I think, you know, for our public, just like we're making comments, that's the point of doing this in terms of how an HOA could make comments to modify this. We can all make comments. There's a reason why we hold public hearings, so we can make those comments in the context of the limitations we've had. And we have had a very little say in ADUs for a long time because the state made that. It is the flip side of a balance. ADUs in Danville have been those wonderful hidden gems that, generally speaking, have fit in well to our neighborhoods, given the standards that we've had. And we've had parking standards that go along, which is, I think, important. We don't go away from that. But It's better than all of these other ways of achieving affordable units with multi-story buildings and things like that. So it's the trade-off, allows our kids to come back. I can move into my ADU, I'll rent it to my kids or whatever. You know, it has so far for the past 2.5 decades worked well in Danville, and very, very few complaints. So I think we should take every opportunity to keep as high a standards as possible. I think we ought to continue this, to come back to us date specific on February 16th with the changes that we've talked about. And then, you know, hopefully we'll get additional comments from other folks. It'll give them a little more time, but I think it'll give us the time we need to see this come back with those changes. And the last thing I'd say is, and this is important, Rob mentioned it, if that one neighborhood knew right now that anybody can start building these, build 3 units, a JADU and an ADU, lose all their parking, I tell you what, we'd be moving faster on getting that parking permit to go away, given we don't have the impacts on the neighborhood, particularly since there's no school, but we really have never had the opportunity to see that neighborhood as we promised with the building of all those units. So I would just hope that, again, that's on our checklist. We need to move on that.
If I can
be willing to make
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Mayor Morgan, just to follow up on one of those points there. While we were talking here, I did look back at the statute and at the HCD guidance on the manufactured home issue. So that definition is taken straight out of the statute, and the HCD guidelines make very clear in their FAQs. They say, can a manufactured home be an ADU? And their answer is yes. So the way it's drafted right now is what the state law says.
So is there more verbiage or something that goes along with that? Because that's just a definition. So it's not an action item. It's not saying, oh, you can't do this. It's just like defining terms in contract, but the term doesn't show up in the contract then.
It
must be more to action.
Yeah, without going into the whole statute, they define what a manufactured home is, and in the statute they say that a manufactured home can be an ADU.
And a manufactured home that has no foundation, that's temporarily set, is still a manufactured home that qualifies as an ADU, and we have no say over it.
Yeah, it just has that definition.
Built on a permanent chassis.
Yeah.
Dave.
Anyways, sorry to interrupt.
No, you didn't interrupt at all. Thank you for that information. Dave Fong. So the Dave Crompton. We have 2 Daves here, and I've got the other Dave on mute. So there you go.
Dave Compton, do you want to go first?
No, I was calling on you, actually. I was clarifying that I was going to you.
Yeah, that's why earlier I was asking about cleanup bills, because, you know, shame on us. We didn't know this a year ago when this thing took effect. It's important now. I think there's an awareness. It's above the radar screen. There's a lot of input, and it's constructive, and we can see that there's reasons why there needs to be some cleanup in that bill. Who is the advocacy group that could really be that single source where we can consolidate a lot of these comments so that there's somebody going to the Capitol and fighting on behalf of the concerns that we're raising here? And that's the first question. Second question is, I'm a member, you know, I'm a homeowner within an HOA, and we tend to have more restricted rules when it comes to visual appeal and landscaping and things like that. It doesn't preclude us from requiring a homeowner to have a certain visual appeal if they intend to install an ADU, correct?
I would say that you have limited ability. I would say that, you know, most homeowners want to maintain their neighborhood and they want to work with the HOA, and that will probably happen in a lot of cases. But if you had an obstinate property owner that wanted to challenge your ability to impose those requirements, it would be, they probably would be able to not comply with what you or the HOA is requesting.
I'll take on your first question, Councilmember Fong. So the League of California Cities, or I guess they're calling it Cal Cities now, they're basically the statewide advocacy group for cities on these issues. I would say that the law has done nothing but move further in the direction of limiting our ability to review these things. As the Vice Mayor mentioned, you know, there's always been a lot of state law on ADUs. But this is something that almost every year for the last 5 years, they've passed a new bill that goes a little further. As Dave mentioned, the real problem in delaying this implementation was they passed 5 bills in 1 year and didn't particularly coordinate them and told HCD, you guys figure it out. So I would be skeptical that the legislature is interested in doing anything, but if they do, it would be the League of California Cities would be our primary advocacy group to say, look, can we clean up some of these issues? I'm not aware if any organization representing HOAs weighed in on any of this legislation, because obviously that's a separate issue in terms of, again, that's a contractual relationship between the people who live in that subdivision. I'm not sure whether that industry weighed in on any of this or not. That I don't know.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Hey, Newell, I think you said you would like to make a motion.
I'd be willing to make a motion. I was just going to say, and I know, Dave, this always hurts. I've been in an HOA. Public agencies can't recognize HOA. And what that means is you can have all the standards. Many HOAs have standards that aren't legal on so many levels, even ones that were done within the past few years. It's just the nature of who writes them and how they're done. And when the town issues a permit, it can only issue, and this is true of any public agency, issue the permit based on state law and local ordinances. And you may or may not have an obligation to still go through your HOA. And those requirements that local HOA has is only valid where it doesn't conflict with state law and or local ordinances. So it's always a challenge, but it's, as David Crumpton said, it's generally worked unless you get that obstinate person. But I would move that we take all the comments that we've talked about here on the parking and make those tweaks as far as we can, and move this to come back for a first reading on date specific for February 16th.
Did we want to add that the general development information that Dave prompted, is that what you said, Newell? Are we adding that into the motion?
Yeah, I meant to say I would include all of those comments.
Okay, so all the comments.
Legally add to this to move this along, tighten it up on parking and all of those things. You know, add the JADU, you know.
Second.
Okay, so I have a first, I have a motion and a second. Marie, could you do the roll call, please?
Okay, and Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storr,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, the item was approved unanimously to return for a first reading on February 16th.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for the members of the public that joined us today and contributed your comments as well. We appreciate that as well. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 9, which is our town council reports. And the first item on here is item 9.1, which is the Chamber of Commerce liaison report by myself and Vice Mayor Arnerich. If you don't mind, I'll go ahead and start. And Will, since you're on mute, I'll go ahead and do it. So just this past week, we had a really fun celebration. It was called Refresh, Reconnect, and Rock, featuring a celebrity master of ceremonies from Channel 7, our meteorologist, Mike Nico, who is also a Danville resident. And we heard performances by David Victor, who is formerly of the multi-platinum band Boston. He also had an opportunity to speak to us about his nonprofit. It was a really wonderful opportunity to hear him. I had the opportunity to swear in the 2021 Board of Directors. We've got a great group of people, very talented individuals that were going to be leading us into the 2021 year. And they are also led by the board lead, who is now Kira Fike. We had Contra Costa County Supervisor Candace Anderson attended, Vice Mayor Newell Arnrich, as well as all the council members were there. They joined in person, as well as had pre-recorded wonderful tributes to the chamber and to the board of directors, outlining our partnership as well as our businesses and the chamber relationship. I'd also like to mention that they've come together for a date for the State of the Town. So mark your calendars. The State of the Town for 2021 will take place on April 1st. No April Fool's jokes, please. And it'll take place via Zoom. And tickets will be available through the chamber as well. And it's also a fundraiser for the chamber. So it's a great opportunity to see a wonderful event, which they're starting to plan now. And so get your tickets now. And I don't know, Newell, if you'd like to add something to that.
No, that's great. I would just say, by the way, that April 1st, Mayor Morgan, don't be surprised if you're the only one there because they actually moved the meeting and they didn't tell you. That'll be the joke.
That's why I kind of, either that or I'm going to get a fool's hat to wear. I figured it was one or the other. So exactly. So the next item on the agenda this evening is 9.2, which is also from our Vice Mayor for Senior Advisory Commission and the Liaison Report.
Thank you. It was great. Councilmember Dave Fong was on the meeting as well. The board got to meet their two new appointees that we had there. They jumped right in. It was an exciting opportunity, particularly for those two new members, because when our Councilmember Fong was on the Senior Advisory Commission, along with the other members, it was this meeting that they had targeted to have their master plan, their consultant come forward to outline it, to give them input on that pathway. So this is going to be a great year for seniors and our program to see where we stand, what are the opportunities we have, what things can we add, subtract to where we're at. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity. I would just also note that we will likely have another opening on that commission coming up in June. And I know Marie's starting to advertise, so still opportunity for people to get involved. That's it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it is going to be a great year for seniors, and we're all doing such a great opportunity for reach out for them as well. 9.3 is the town council updates. Do we have any updates from the council that you'd like to report? Newell?
I have one, and this is about masks. And Mayor Morgan, you've been really good every time we do something in the downtown about making sure we sign. With the now vaccines that are out there, there's two, Pfizer and Moderna. It's really important to know, I have people who aren't wearing masks say, I don't have to because I've been vaccinated. And let's be very clear, the law is you need to wear a mask if you're within 6 feet of somebody or you enter a building. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're vaccinated. And it's important to note that this vaccination is not a live virus. Live virus vaccinations prevent you from getting this. These are modified RNA. What it does is it reteaches your body and gives it the trigger points to attack that virus should you get it. So you will have little or no symptoms, but there's no evidence that you still can't transmit it because you may have a mild case of it. So yes, you still must wear a mask, and it will be likely through the entire year of 2021. Important that we not argue about that. It's not arguable, but people in our downtowns, whether they're walking or on the trails, need to wear masks and meet all those conditions. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, and that's a good point, as well as, if I can tag on to that, stating that even our healthcare workers are required to wear a mask, and they are being vaccinated as well. And at a rate of at least 75 to 86% of all of our healthcare workers have decided to get the vaccine. Are there any other town council reports? Seeing none, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. Have a wonderful night, and I'm sure we'll see you after Valentine's Day. So enjoy your Valentine's Day as you're sheltering in place, eating chocolate, as what we've been doing basically for the entire year. So enjoy your time, and everybody have a good evening. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good.